Hello, everybody. This is Dr. Jeff Parker with Marriage Matters. And if you're watching this on YouTube, let me encourage you, if you would, to subscribe, be a part of the family. More than that, you can get notices as new videos are coming up. Well, today I'm going to finish up this session on premarital counseling. And outside of your relationship with Jesus Christ, the most important decision that people will ever make is who they're going to spend the rest of their life with. And a lot of times what happens is couples fail to get good, sound premarital counseling prior to getting married. One of the things that I'll tell couples as we sit down for the first time, I'll say, I want to remove the element of surprise. They'll look at you and they'll think, well, what do you mean by that? And I'll say, well, a lot of times after couples get married, they get in a very, very difficult argument, and one person will make this statement. They'll say, if I had known that about you, I would have never married you. That's a strong statement, and that's because somebody has been surprised by something they've discovered in their spouse. So what premarital counseling is going to do is going to create, if it's an effective tool, it's going to be able to create a measure of transparency, of honesty. You want two people to be accepting of each other because there's been a full disclosure. In other words, in premarital counseling, as a counselor, I'm trying to guide the process so that two people will be honest with each other. They'll dialogue about their personalities, who they really are, how they really think, their beliefs, their ideologies, their theology, and even more so, also their past. If there's things in their past that they need to bring out, then you want to help them bring that out because you want, in essence, full disclosure. You want people to accept each other for who they are. Now, remember, James Dobson made this statement. He said, marriage is, if you think about it, it's like two big rivers that are coming together. And the water is just churning and rolling. And, I'm a kayaker, and I don't do as much as I used to, but I still love to kayak. If I'm going to go down a river, I like to know where the rough places are. Is this a class 2? Is this a class 4? Because what class it is will determine how rough it's going to be. Marriage is kind of like that as well. In premarital counseling, what you're trying to do is you're trying to walk couples through some of the difficulties that they're going to face once they're married. Let me give you an example. One of them is in the area of their faith, their belief system, who they are spiritually. Sometimes two people will sit down, and usually it's the wife or the prospective wife that'll do this. I'll ask, are they Christians? And a guy may say, no, I'm sorry, I'm not. She'll say, well, that's not an issue. We've talked about this, and I believe that I can win him to Christ in our marriage. Well, let me tell you, that is a dangerous statement. Do you know that the Bible says that you and I are not to be unequally yoked? What that means is simply what I titled this session, Premarital Counseling, the danger of yoking an ox to a jackass. Because what happens is you've got an ox, and an ox has a particular nature. They're more servant, more docile, more calmer. Then you've got a jackass, and we know what that is. Rebellious, defiant, difficult. You put these two animals under the same yoke, and you're going to have problems sooner or later, because what's going to happen is those two natures are going to conflict with each other, and they're going to be going in different directions. One of the things that I remind a young couple is this: the two cannot, Bible says, the two cannot walk together except they be agreed. So you need to marry people that share your faith and your belief system. Secondly, this thing of children. Children are no longer a given. A lot of times, years ago, it just was a given that after we get married, we're going to have children. But now, wives as well as husbands may have a particular career path, may be in the middle of their education, or they may have a career path where they just simply do not want children. Now, whether that's right or wrong is up to them. But what I can tell you is you don't want that information to come out once a couple is married. There needs to be some agreement as to children down the road. Another thing is that sometimes a spouse, when they marry another person, they need to be supportive of that career path. In other words, like I said a moment ago, a wife may have a career path just like her husband, and so they have to be supportive of each other. I've got 4 children, and 2 boys and 2 girls. But let me say, as a dad, I encouraged my daughters to get their education and to have some career path. Now, I've been counseling a long time, and I often would say, God forbid, but you may marry and one day end up in a divorce. Or your husband may become disabled, or your husband may die, in which at that point you'll be left with the responsibility of the family, especially if children are involved. So I think it is good to make sure that a couple are together as they look at children down the road and also as they begin to contemplate different career paths. Another area is that of debt. I did a video on debt, and I think it's well worth the time of looking at it. But nowadays, because credit seems to be such an easy thing to acquire, more and more you're finding that men and women will come into premarital counseling and even go into marriage, sometimes with substantial debt, or minimum, they have poor financial practices. If you don't come to some kind of resolution in the area of finances, then sooner or later this is going to be a problem in the marriage down the road, and it can be a very big problem. Another area, another rough place, and I like to talk to a couple about, is parents and in-laws. In-laws, let me say this, they can make or break the best, the most healthiest of marriages. The reality is, and couples have to understand this, the Bible says that a man and a woman have to leave in order to cleave. Now you may say, well, it says that a man, but I believe that for a marriage to be healthy and to be vibrant, 2 people have to make the decision that they're going to leave their families, their parents, their homes, and they're going to cleave and come together and build a strong marriage. As I said, in-laws can make or break the best of marriages, and an absolute no-no is when couples sometimes get into marital conflict and they resort to going to their parents to discuss the problem. Let me tell you, that is a no-no, because the reality is that they're going to create some bitterness, some anger, some frustration in their parents or their in-laws that will result in undermining that marriage. So it's critical that a couple understand that you need outside counseling, those people that may be mentors to you in marriage, so that when you hit some difficult problems, there's conflict, turmoil at some point, that you're not going to your parents or your in-laws to get advice. That simply doesn't work. Only in the case of endangerment to a life or something of that sort, that's something that is that critical, would you go to your parents. So, another area, and it's funny because when you say this, a lot of times couples, they kind of smile, but, love will get us through get us through those difficult. We just love each other so much. They'll be just all chummed up together, hugging on each other, and they say, we just love each other. We believe that we love each other so much. We'll get through that. Let's move on. Now, one of the things that I like to remind them is, yes, you are in love, but some of that love is physical, sexual attraction, it's infatuation. You're kind of enamored with this person. But as the marriage moves along, as you, quote, get further down the river, the rough place begins to be when the infatuation and that physical attraction begins to wane a little bit. There has to be something deeper, and it is a level of intimacy and camaraderie, fellowship. The Bible talks about koinonia, fellowship, intimate communication. There has to be a level of intimacy that has begun to develop in that marriage for the long haul. Now, when I'm talking about sexual intimacy, I've often become more aware of the fact that it is getting to be very difficult for two people to be intimate sexually. Sometimes it's due, and I address this now, it is due to sexual abuse. If one, male or female, husband or wife, prospective groom or bride, have been sexually abused at some point in the past as a child, then it's going to affect that intimacy. When I see that, I like to put that person in the hands of somebody that is trained, even a psychiatrist, somebody that is trained in sexual trauma, in order to help them come to terms and to find some measure of healing so that they will not have problems in their own sexual intimacy, that physical relationship that they're trying to develop with their spouse. This is critical. Another area is drugs. Now, I'm not talking about illegal drugs. I'm talking about people who struggle with anxiety, who struggle with depression. A lot of times in premarital counseling, couples, one or the other, may be on Zoloft, 50 milligrams of Zoloft, or Lexapro, or Prozac, or Paxil. Most of couples don't realize that sexual intimacy is going to be affected by the drugs that they may be taking for some kind of behavioral or cognitive or mental disorder, anxiety, depression, being a couple of examples. So often I will encourage them to go back to their doctor or their psychiatrist who can prescribe that, and talk to them about maybe decreasing the dosage or going to some other drug that may not affect that area quite as much. It needs to be addressed. Now, I know this has been pretty serious, and I'm going to end even with a more serious note. I believe that premarital counseling can save a life. I've been an Army chaplain. I've been a missionary. I have an earned doctorate. I've spent about 40 years of my life counseling people. I've gone to homes where a wife murdered her husband with a knife. I've gone to homes where I've had to take a piece of pipe out of a man who was trying to kill his wife in the front yard. I've been to homes where I've had to take a gun away from a man or a woman because at that point the marriage could have created such violence that it could have resulted in somebody being killed or permanently injured. Let me say this. You need premarital counseling. You need the spiritual wisdom of somebody who is able to possibly identify conflict that can result in something that could be even dangerous to your life. So I encourage you, if you're contemplating getting married, if you know somebody else that's thinking about getting married, give them this address, this YouTube address. Get them to go online and listen to these videos. Well, I hope this is helping you. I want you to know again, I love all of you. I'm going to pray for you that God will help you build a strong and a vibrant marriage. Remember what Psalm 127:1 says, "Except the Lord builds the house, they labor in vain that build it." But I love you. I pray for you. I hope you're having a great day, and I hope this helps. Bye-bye.